Sail across the waters. Tell your sons and daughters what the struggle brings.
Hello. Welcome to the Black Butterfly Podcast. We are in the cocoon room. I'm your co-host, Amaru.
And I am your co-host, Candace.
Well, this is the podcast where we talk about positive Black relationships, whether it be relational, whether it be male to woman, boyfriend, girlfriend, whether it be marriage, right? But we father to son, mother to daughter, grandfather, grandparents to parents, grandparents to grandkids. And so we try to be in a space where we have these positive conversations. And so with that thought in mind, today's podcast will be about we will try to label it absentee parents, whether in the home, out of the home, deadbeat or whatnot. But the topic is surrounding that and how does that affect the development of the child as they mature into adults. And so I would like to turn over to Candace before we get started. Do you have any opening thoughts?
Yeah, I would just like to say I think you are correct in what you just talked about. We have to remember that what happens when we grow up in the home can obviously flow into our relationships as we mature and as we move into our adulthood. So today we'll just be talking about some information and talking about how it relates to, being generational. If you learn something from a great-grandparent, a grandparent, your mother, how mother and father, how it can affect you as an adult moving into your relationship with your friends and with your spouse and with your partner.
And so housekeeping note the reason for we apologize for the time change because a lot of our people or our audience are creatures of habit, and so Sunday night, and so we had some scheduling conflicts, and so we wanted to make sure that we came at the right time. I know people watching football or they're probably cleaning up or just come home from church or whatnot. So try to catch people at the right time. Also, you can also watch this on a replay if you go to our page on Instagram, YouTube, on obviously Facebook and Twitter. We also have a Twitter page, and so you just click on it. It's always replayable, and so it's at your disposal. So with that, I would like to pivot over to our scripture of the day. And I'll give it to you, Candace.
All right, so our scripture of today is Romans 8:28. God works through all situations to fulfill his purpose. And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. And so I chose that scripture because we are talking about relationships among men and women. And we all, when we get into a relationship, we all should be entering into a relationship dating with a purpose. And typically, when you begin dating someone, if you have set the tone that you would like to get married, you enter into that relationship looking for the person, for your forever person. Okay. And so dating with a purpose. And that is why I chose this Bible scripture.
Okay. That is cool. I like that scripture also. Well, to start the topic off, I would like to start off with some statistics. And so one of the statistics that Candace shared with me as we were prepping for the podcast was this one, which was amazingly interesting to me. That 24.7 million children, which is 33% of all homes in the U.S., are living without their biological fathers in the home. And so that is like mind-blowing to me. So that's one out of three households who have children are living without their biological fathers in the home. And so I would like to give it to you, Candace, because you are the expert. But expound on that.
So when I looked up the statistics, I was interested to know how many kids that actually live in the home without their biological fathers. And there is a percentage, to where there are kids that also live without their biological mothers in the home. But it was astonishing because we do know that having a father who is absentee does affect how kids relate to each other, and then how they behave in relationships moving on throughout life. And we also know that it causes them to have certain anxiety disorders and things like that, how they relate to other people, how they cope. So it's really important, even if the father is not in the home, that he is active in the child's life and that he has a healthy co-parenting relationship with the mother.
And just to add with that, so I'm part of that statistic because my biological, I wasn't in the same home with my biological father, me or my brother. My sister was, and so that's why when I think about the people that the area that we're from, Gary, Indiana. As we were looking, so I was just thinking in my head, I'm like, wow. So how many people do I really know who had their biological father at home? I could probably name two off the top of my head.
Really?
Yeah, two. I'll share the Deloses from the top of my head. The Deloses and Bone, Clark Bone and his parents.
Okay.
So that's off the top of my head. If someone if they could like to share, they could. But yeah, and so I'm just like, wow, like that's interesting, and you got to think about what's so um, amazing about that statistic, because like you said, it affects you as you get older. Like, so certain things, like, so for example, like some people who wouldn't have two parents in the home, right? Usually, I'm not it because correct me if I'm wrong. Usually, they will repeat some of the same things that they saw, right? And so if they
Mhm.
don't have two parents in the home, that means they less likely to get married, right? But when I look at some of the people that I know, we can go further into this, well, as we go along with the show, a lot of them are married. So it just shows you how statistics work and how some of us moved away from the statistical norm. But go ahead.
Well, you have to look at it like this. Think about, I always relate things back to like substance abuse or abusive behavior. You will have, if you have 5 kids in the home and they all witness substance abuse and they all witness domestic violence, you'll have, maybe 2 of them that will go in the route of being abusers or being abused, being victims. And then you'll have the other 3 that will push as far away from the negativity as possible because they don't want to repeat that cycle. Okay, so not every child who grow up in a single parent home, are less likely to get married. Some of them, because they were so hurt by the dynamics of their household, they will make sure that they go get healed and they will push into being married because they want that for their children.
Mhm. That makes sense. That makes sense. Also, so we got another statistic here I like to share. So 57.6, so almost 60% of Black children, which is again glaring. 20% of white children and 31% of Hispanic children are living without their biological father in the home. Again, like and like as we were prepping for the show, that 57, almost 60% jumps off the screen because that's like crazy. Like, think about
Mhm.
that. Like 6 out of 10 households that you can just come up off the top of your head are living without their biological father. And so just think about the impact that is having not only on the women, right, the single mother, right, or the children, right, the girls that's being raised, but the men, because the men are not, well, the boys, so to speak, but as they become men, that's what they grew up with. That, like in my own situation, and I don't mind sharing this. Like, I knew as I was growing up, as I was maturing in my teenage years, that's why some of the decisions I made, like, if I'm going, and I thought to myself, if I'm going to luckily one day have kids, right, or luckily get married, because again, I didn't talk about marriage as a teenager, but I'm like, if that so happens, I'm gonna be with the mother of my child. And so that's how I always interpreted it, as I was getting older. So that's an amazing statistic. But go ahead.
I would say though, one of the things that my father has always taught us, he said his prayer was that he got married and all of his children would be by his wife and under his under the same household. So as we relate back to the Bible says that you should be equally yoked. And I really do believe that oftentimes we wonder why there is so much strife in relationships and so much drama. And it is because, when you're young, if you did not grow up in a household where you knew what the role was of a mother, or you knew what the role was of a father, you tend to start making up your own rules, and you have, no shade, I'm just saying this, there is women who have several different, fathers for their children. And there's also men who have a lot of, mothers of their children. And so the relationship with each mother of the child is different. The relationship with the father of the children is different. And so if you have, six baby mamas or six baby fathers, your kids are, weekends and holidays and vacations, you're having to adjust and figure out where the kids are going to go. And although you might be doing your best to co-parent, have a healthy co-parenting relationship, the kids oftentimes they still suffer, and because you can't be everywhere every time. You might end up having children who have birthdays on the same day as a kid that's getting ready to graduate from college, or one of your kids may be getting married and the other one may be graduating from kindergarten. Like, how do you choose which event that you're going to go to, and then have the mothers and the fathers be okay with it? Because at some point someone's not going to be okay.
Okay, and that makes sense. I got a comment from Lenny B. The number is higher than I expected. So that's from our YouTube channel. Thanks for checking in through YouTube. Yeah, it's really high. That's why I was just like, wow, like that's almost 50%. Let me backtrack too. So now that I got to thinking of more, Charles' father, his father was at home with him and his family. JJ and his father, J. Martin, their father, and then the McGee's. So that's just off the top of my head. So that's 5. But that's like out of all the people that we know from that area, like that's still a staggering number. So statistics make stuff real, and so I think that's why I'm just amazed by that.
It really does. If you even draw from an educational standpoint and a crime standpoint, oftentimes when they think about building prisons, they look at how many kids grew up in a home without their fathers. They also look at, when we talk about the ISEP scores in school, they also look at, how many kids grew up in a home without their fathers. And they use ISEP scores and those that IRE scores to determine if kids are going to be delinquent or not, and if they're going to cause trouble in the community, if they're going to be violent. So they look at things like that. And although, we can say that kids grow up in the home with both parents and they still get in trouble, that's true, so there's always exceptions to the rule.
And then this is another statistic right here, which was interesting. 72% of the U.S. population, period, is fatherless. So again, like these numbers are like staggering, right? And but a lot of times, that's why when we have nuanced discussions about family and stuff, this is the reason why, for me, my point of view, I always center it back to the men. Because, we do stupid stuff, right? No man's perfect, right? Except for Black Jesus, right? But no man's perfect, right? But like at the end of the day, with the 60s, with the stuff that was going on in the 60s and 70s and 80s, like even with slavery, right? The men was out of the home, not by choice though, because of the, slave and all that stuff, being sold off. And so for a long time, it's been that way. But, I believe, and I always gonna believe this with the bottom of my soul, like, if the man still dictates the household and what, like as far as the relationship, and just stay in there, stick with it, buy in, some of these numbers are reversed, obviously. And that's why I think that is dictated by the men, and that's always gonna be my belief in that. Do you want to go look at these comments here? We got a couple comments.
We do have a couple comments, but let me follow up. So yes, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, 72.2% of the U.S. population is fatherless. And because of that number, that is the most significant family or social problem that America is currently facing right now. So that's really, it's really important. These numbers are really high. We have 72.2%, 57.6% African-American children are without their fathers. 20.7% of Caucasian children are without their fathers, and I believe it was 35 or 36% of Hispanics without their fathers. And so we look at like all of the violence in the world. Children feel like they're not being loved, and if they feel like they're not being loved, it's easy for them to go out and hurt other people, right? Because we always talk about how hurt people hurt people.
Yeah. And so somebody get the baby. Somebody get the baby. I can hear. Well, I got them here, so don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. That's good for me. James Webb checking in. They use ISTEL scores as factors to build prison. Yes, facts. And thanks for checking in, Mr. Webb, J Dub. Shout out to him. He does Indy Juneteenth in Indianapolis, and so him and his wife are doing wonderful things. We always promoting Black excellence, and so we love that he's checking in. Well standardized test, yes, absolutely. And then here we have a question from our YouTube. Why do you think the negative behaviors or outcomes are related to an absent father? What role does he play? We're gonna get into that. That's good. We can start it now. Go ahead. I'll let you answer that because go ahead.
Right. I will say, just to kind of follow before we dive into it, you got to think about it. When we have two parents in the household, right? Mom's imprint on the girls and dad imprints on the boys. And so you can, even if a dad is home, he could be physically home and emotionally unavailable. Children learn from their surroundings. And if they see their fellow classmates with two parents in the home and they're nurturing and they're giving them everything that they need, the kid is always going to feel like they're missing something. Was I not good enough for my dad to be present? Was I not good enough for my mom to be present? So they're missing things. They feel like their parents wasn't there and they're not able to give them all the things that they need. And so they seek that. You can even go back to when kids are adopted by other people. They can have the best family that adopt them and feel loved by the adopted mother or adopted father, but they still feel like they're missing something. So it is definitely important, if the bio mother and the bio father is alive, that they be present in their children's life. They don't have to live in the same household, but they do have to co-parent, because you're imprinting on your kids and it's things from you that they need. And if they don't get it from home, they're going to seek it somewhere else. Kids will take attention, whether it's negative attention or positive attention. So we have to make sure that we're always there for the kids. And you hear that crying, that's my great nephew.
Yeah, so and we understand. Trust me, I got a little one, so I understand. Trust me. But it's like just really like I don't know, like it's masking because I look at what even though my biological father wasn't in my home, I saw a stepfather, and so I see the role that he played in my evolution, in my thought process. And like, I always look at history, right? And so when my mom and her siblings, they were in foster homes, late until, she became a parent. And so a lot of things that happened with myself, at some point, when I looked upon it, I said, I can't really, yes, childhood wasn't what I wanted to be, but, I can't really blame her because she wasn't shown what that looks like. And so that's why it was more important for me to be locked in with when I started having kids, like, no, I'm gonna be more hands-on. I seen it. I see some of it with my own household, but I saw a lot of it with other family members, like my aunt, with my uncle, with some of my friends, right? What that looked like. I remember we would at Martell's house, I'll never forget it. We were eating at the table, and his mother had this picture of this black woman on the table, and she'd be looking down because she was a hairstylist. And so he laughs when I talk about it. I said, man, I never really realized that people ate at the table until I came to your house. Yeah, like that's yes. And so he laughed, and the way the picture was looking at me, and I was like, why is she looking at me like I'm lying? We would all start laughing and stuff. But it was, or be it Kevin's house, and I never saw that before. You know what I'm saying? Like, we never sat and ate as a family like that. And so some of the things I'm like, okay, I know what to do when I do have my own. We would eat at the table, or see it like on the TV with the Cosby Show. Seeing that was just like, oh, that's what that is. Like, I never knew what that is. That was so.
You know what's really funny? Like people call me and my family the Cosbys or the Huxtables because there was so much structure. Like we didn't have televisions in our bedrooms. We couldn't have a telephone in our bedrooms. Like when we watched television, my dad called it the family room. My mom called it the family room. We had to go into the family room to watch TV as a family. Or we had TVs in the house. We had them in the, in our living room. We had them in the family room. We had them in my mom's room and my dad's room. And they would always go, "Hey, don't go in our room. As soon as they leave, we go and watch TV because we know we don't have TV unless we in the family room watching TV as a family." And so that is just how people have structured their family. And we did, and we would sit down. Like if my dad worked, because he worked in the steel mill, obviously he wasn't there at the time. But when we had dinner, it was 4 children and it was my mom, and we had dinner together. Then my father come home, then we have dinner as a family. So I was used to that. So to see other families that wasn't used to that, you have to change your lens, and you have to, be accepting of that and teach them. So yes, it is very important that the mother and the father plays a role in the children's life. Now let's just not talk about father, because we do know that there's fathers
Yes.
who are single men that is also raising their
Yes.
kids. And the same thing, girls and boys long to have that relationship with their mother. Even if the parent is toxic, sometimes you can see them where they have that unconditional love for their parent and they want their parent to actually be there.
Yeah. And again, I never, not that we ate together, but like when we would eat in separate rooms. And so I never, like, I don't remember off the top of my head if we actually sat at the table, like just sat at the table, past the food type stuff. It was, so I'd never, I can't recall that off the top of my head. But we got a comment here from Scrutinize This. The scriptures talk about there being a time not wise to have children. We are there. The scripture says that when that time passes, having children will be okay again. This is a deep spiritual issue.
I definitely agree. I agree with that, because think about it, and we have to get back to our the topic, but I really agree with that. Thank you for that comment. Think about it. Someone said on the radio yesterday, and the numbers were astonishing. I think this year alone they had over 436 mass shootings, 126 shootings within schools. So it's scary. Like, okay, can I put my kid on a school bus and send him to school? Is they going to be safe? There has been shootings on the school bus. There has been shootings in the school, in the grocery store. At the banks. There's been shootings everywhere. At gas stations, mass shootings. I think it was they were running track. They had a tournament and there was a shooting. The boys just got shot up at a college and different things like that. So this is a time where you feel like, okay, if I get married and I have a family, is my kids going to be safe? And I know that, good things happen as well as bad things happen. But oftentimes when you send your kids off to school, you're sending them with the aspect that they're going to return home to you. And in this day and age, there's just no uncertainty about that.
Okay. And then any negative outcomes must be assessed to the hands of the rock of the cradle. It's about who raised the children. I absolutely agree with that.
I agree with that.
Comment leader, and checking in. I love this sister, just so creative. Speaking for myself, me not having a father in my home made me take on a more masculine role, which definitely affected me with relationships to this day. It's hard for me to be docile. And so we will get into that because
yes, we will.
Like, I don't fault, and I've had this conversation with multiple women. So situation, real quick. So like you'll have woman, single mother who's been single for a minute because she, had children before she got with the boyfriend or the current guy, right? The child's father not in their life. And so, like as she said, she's been, taking on both roles. And so when she do come into with a guy, right, or if in a married guy, there's issue because the guy wants to be able to rear the child or, discipline him, majority him, because a lot of times what happens, a lot of times the women have single, have boys, sons and stuff. And so it becomes an issue because the mother feels that the guy who she's with is being hard on the son. And I've never thought about it this way, but I have experiences because my stepfather raised me. He was super hard on me, but I understand now as an adult because he was trying to get me to understand things. It's easy to get in trouble, but it's hard to get out of it.
Oh, absolutely.
I have to be able to, because men, with men, when you have boys, you have to show them how to be accountable for their actions. You mess up, there's a consequence behind everything you do. And so, for instance, if you don't take the garbage out, I come home, garbage on the floor, we need to have a discussion. If this happens again, okay, now we need to have some disciplinary action behind that. That's how life works, right? If you at work, you don't do your job, what happens? You get called. You have before you get fired, you have a discussion, right? Make sure it don't happen again. Second time, you may get rolled up. Third time, you get fired, right? Mm-hmm. So it works on the job. It works in school. You do something in school, you don't do it right the first time, you have a discussion about it. Second time, you have corrective action behind it. Third time, maybe some disciplinary action, your parents get called, right? So it works in school, it works at work. Why it don't work at home? That's correct. So that's what I'm saying. And so I don't know if that's your situation, but I've had conversations with women about that. And I'm like, no, you can't know. Like now, well, mental health and mental issues, and okay, that's the new issue of everything. But from the overview, no, you have to allow him to rear the child, because a woman can't teach a man how to be a man.
I agree.
A man can't teach a woman how to be a woman, right? But when you do have, like, that's just like if if I was saying when I had a daughter and I met someone and I'm always protecting her, she's gonna be like, no, you can't do that because you can't teach her how to be a woman. And so that's the role reversal in that. But yeah, we will get into that real quick. And then, so thank you for that comment, Valita. And then Kenny, live from all the way from Nigeria. I love that brother. What's up? Safe travel.
Yes, thanks sir. For tuning in from Nigeria. That's a lot of dedication, right?
Yes.
That shows that we are truly loved.
Yes,
so
yes.
I want to thank everyone for the comments, and we're going to talk about boys. Okay, boys who grow up with absentee fathers, how that affects them. Mm-hmm. Okay, so boys can go into risky behaviors such as doing drugs, getting into trouble, getting into crime. The behaviors, when they do this, right, people use drugs to cope. And if they're getting into trouble and they're doing crime, they often use those mechanisms to soothe their anxiety. A lot of them get anxious because they don't know how to behave around other men. They are not showing signs of masculinity. And so they go out, because remember we talked about attention-seeking behaviors. They'll take attention, whether it's negative attention or positive attention. Wherever they can get it, that's how they'll take it.
I agree with that. And I think one of the points you said that they don't know how to coordinate or act amongst other men. That is very true. This was last night, so I was at the cigar lounge last night, and you can tell, like, when you're with, like, so men, I'm 40, so 40 and over, right, who are a little more sophisticated. You can tell they had male figures in their lives, because how they greeted one another, right? How they valued one another, when they referred to one another, hey, King, how you doing? Make sure you're good. Everyone's in a comfortable space. They kept checking up on one another. And see, that tells, like, because you know how to conduct yourself. Not saying all cases, but it's most cases. That shows me you either had a male father figure around, or you've been around men. You've been around men. Not the N-words. You've been around men. So that is absolutely true. And then we got some more comments here. He said this data plan is expensive, but it's such a great topic. I have to tune in. My man, my brother. Yes. Hey, JJ, what up, bro? What up, bro? That is a cold dude right there. That's a cold dude right there.
Hey, Jay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And then that sister-in-law, how you doing? Good. Checking in for our YouTube channel. YouTube popping today, I see.
It is. We're on Facebook friend day.
Yes. Yeah, and that's true. I think too.
Boys learn. Pop that back up so we can read that.
Boys learn from their surroundings and
media, music, and movies. Absolutely correct.
But you got to understand why, because there isn't a lot of male figures around, right? Go ahead.
So they're learning from people who they idolize, and all the time that's not really a good thing. I said that It's okay to learn information from other people, but your mom and your dad should be your biggest influencers. They should be your biggest influencers. You know, I tell people all the time, they talk about like Tupac, and Tupac was great for what he did in the time he did it. And my dad even likes, you know, some of Tupac's music. However, Tupac went to Juilliard. You know, we have these kids that idolize some of these rappers, these basketball players, these entertainers. But that's, again, it's entertainment. Some of them truly don't live that life. Some of them do, but some of them don't. And so you don't want to get your kids in a setting to where they really believe that, and they're acting on that. They're acting out what they see in these video games, or they're acting out what they see in movies or music. Because again, some of those guys, they have lawyers, they have attorneys, they have different things that they have money. They're not going to do the same time all the time because they have those finances, and they might can pay someone to get them out of trouble. If you do that, you know, you're up the road, and we might not see you for 5, 10, 20 years. Some people may not ever come home. So we have to make sure that we're telling them, like, if you're going to listen to this music, if you're going to play this video game, it's just entertainment. Don't live your life through what you see on television or in entertainment.
And to piggyback off that, well, just shout out to my man Al, who was one of the first people who reached out to get this, start the process. So always gratitude, my brother. Always appreciate the comment. So in my own family, right? And I'll just put I look at my uncle, right? That's literally the only male older than me that I can look at. On my mother's side, let me be clear. On my mother's side, because I have another uncle who we we don't know where yet, so we're still looking for him. So God forbid nothing's happened to him. But like my older cousins, right? I got a couple, but like I'm the one that's being pulled to be the resource to, and I don't mind at all, because I want to save them from some of the mistakes I made, right? And so I have a bunch of nephews, second cousins, third cousins. They'll call, ask advice about school, college, jobs, credit, just multitude of things. And I always tell them this. I said, I'm gonna be to you what I needed when I was your age. And so any question, if it's girls, whatever it may be, but we don't have a lot of I wouldn't say a lot, but a lot of men that I do know, they are that to their families and to friends and extended family, and so growing up, I didn't see a lot of, we seen it, but it wasn't like just prevalent. You understand what I'm saying? It wasn't like in your face with it, right? Because the only time we would see guys in suits would be going to church, right? We didn't see black businessmen. I don't remember seeing, only thing, like we would see the police officer, a teacher, or a doctor or something in a suit. But it's like a black businessman. We didn't or if it was a Jehovah's Witness walking around, right? But we didn't see that. And so that's why I understand my role as a man, having surrounded myself with men like JJ, for example. We have these conversations, and it's great to have these conversations because we're being intentional when we talk to one another, and then we come in. Like I was just in Indianapolis. I brought my nephew with me, and so he got to be around men. And when we left, he was like, "Unc, I needed that." He said, "Because I love being." He said, "I've never been." He's always, shout out to my sister, but I'm not, I'm his uncle. His uncle not here, and so he don't have a lot of male influence around him. And so I wanted to bring him along so he can see that, and what that felt like, what those conversations sounded like. And so that's why we need to have that more. We need to have those spaces more for the younger generation. Got a couple more comments here.
All right, let's hold off on the comments. Let's go and pull up the information about the lady, so then we can go back.
Go ahead.
All right, so we're going to talk about how it affects women when the fathers are absent. We talked about bills a little bit, so now we're just going to talk about the women. So women who grew up without fathers long to make up their own survival playbook. And I know that is true. And so that's why we get in a space where men are saying, hey, you should be feminine, but every time I talk with you, I feel like you're being masculine. So if their fathers are not in the home, they make up the rules as they go. This can lead to negative coping skills, sexual promiscuity, total avoidance of intimacy, isolation, substance abuse, anxiety, and depression. And so that's why sometimes when women get into a relationship, they are aggressive instead of being assertive. It's okay to be assertive, right? Letting people know how you set boundaries for yourself. I like assertiveness, but being aggressive in a relationship long term is going to affect the relationship. And it's going to cause arguments in the relationship. And the man, if he grew up in a healthy home where it was his mother and his father, and he knows the expectation of a woman and how he likes to be treated, he's not going to stay around with a woman that is being toxic, and vice versa. If a woman grew up in a home where it was a healthy balance with mom and dad, and she knows how a man should treat a woman, she's not going to stay in a relationship where there's toxicity, because when we see those type of relationships, those are those red flags. And for so long, you may ignore them, but at a certain point you have to move on because it's just not healthy. And so that is what I have for the women, and then now we can talk about address some of the questions that we have.
Okay, sure. We have a comment from our YouTube channel here. Idolize. So I guess she was responding to the comment that was made earlier. They idolize from media, singers, rappers, but it's entertaining. Put Costa back on the shelf. Yes, absolutely.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Katie again, international, y'all. Absenteeism about the fathers many times the result of the prison institution. I think that is one of the sources of the problem. I got a question for you, Katie. So since you're over the pond, could you give us some statistics on what that would look like over there, right? As far as absenteeism parenting, is it as the same numbers, on par with the same numbers over here? What would be that? This is a question I would have, because I think too, a lot of times we only look at it from a lens from a U.S. perspective and not a global perspective. You know what I'm saying? So I think that would give some type of idea. Very low. See, and that's what I'm saying. Like, go ahead.
Thank you, Kenny, for that. Now, I do have to say this. I know it might ruffle some feathers. It's very low in Africa. Why? Because it's training. When the African Americans moved over to the United States, or the melanated people, because I know people don't like to be called African or African Americans, but the melanated people, I think this all started on the plantation field. I have to just say that is just my theory. Some are going to agree, some are going to disagree. There might be some feathers ruffled, but I do believe it started on the plantation, because you have to think about the family dynamics. They were so used to being close, and when they started producing that cattle slavery, they would take the men right from one plantation to the other plantation just so that they can help reproduce. And they kind of got used to that. And so people traditionally had large families, but they became even larger because they were moving them around so much. And so it got easy not being attached to one home or to one mother, having multiple children in different places. And then it relates back to, right, you get comfortable with something for so long, you plant a seed, whether it's good or bad, you're going to keep doing it, right? And so it's our job to make sure that we're changing the dynamics for these kids and for these families.
And then he said that the family of the men usually take over. Wow. Okay. That's interesting. So that's why I always like to have a global perspective on stuff. So thank you, bro, checking in. Valita, it definitely started on the plantation, sis. So she's basically.
I agree. Thank you.
So we are here. Okay, so next one. Emotional impact of absentee dads can be lifelong. Go ahead, Candace.
Okay, so the emotional impact on daughters whose father is not present, it's life lasting. It has the potential to interfere with healthy relationships in adulthood. Females are oftentimes affected uniquely in ways, since many of them go on to dating and having relationships with men as adults, and this can be triggering have unresolved issues. So, for instance, women who are fathers or grow up without a father, they have difficulties in adult relationships. They also have difficulties in the workforce, because they don't know how to properly interact with men, because they feel inferior a lot of times, and they're not comfortable with men being around because their fathers were absent. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I'm noticing this too. I've seen it a couple of times. It's like when a man and a male and female are, they're with each other. You can tell, like, the woman, because she's not been used to being around men. She don't know how would I word it? I wouldn't say act, but like how to conduct herself with a man,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it's like, like, I don't know, like, I think, not that you're supposed to be docile and all that, like, oh my God, don't say anything at all, uh, like that. But it's like, you know, trying to, like, for example, right? So if you out in public and your spouse or your boyfriend do something you don't like, you're correcting him in public, right? And I'm like, you don't do things like that to men. I cringe, because
Mm-hmm.
if we flip it and he listened to you talking with one of your girlfriends and he immediately corrects you after that, those certain things you just don't do. Like, you don't, like, you correct children, you don't correct adults, especially someone who you're that's supposed to be your main squeeze. You don't do there's certain things you just don't do. And I'm like, oh my God, like, that's nuts. Like, so it's like, and it could go both ways too, because I seen men do it. And I'm like, oh, bro, you pull it to the side or wait later to, have that conversation. You don't do it immediately in front of people. Like, no, that was wrong. And I'm just like, but like you said, they don't know how. I would say act. I would probably say conduct themselves,
Mm-hmm.
or I, I'm trying to be politically correct, right? So I don't want to say act like, because people acting crazy and all that. But yeah, I don't think that they understand. Some women don't understand. I've seen it more from women than I've seen it men, because some men don't even care. They're like, well, I just let her talk and all that. But I've seen that up before a lot, and I'm
It,
like, ugh.
It depends on the setting and surrounding you're in, and also depends on who you hang out with. Because I've also seen men do it where they have their mother and father worked together, but their dad was very toxic, or he was violent, or he struggled from PTSD, or he was a womanizer. And so you know that men who are womanizers, they don't respect women. And so
Mm,
I think this was just the topic that we're doing today. I felt that it was crucial because the way that you grow up, whether you come from a single parent household or you grew up in a home where both parents were there, but they were very toxic, you are going to move into your relationship with those same behaviors because at some point you've normalized them and you think it's okay. And so I think a lot of times men and women, they'll get in a space and say, hey, why are they floating through relationships like that? Why has he had so many women? Why has she had so many men? So the young girl, if she keeps dating, she's going to figure out, I don't like this individual because of the way he treats me. And the man is going to flow through a lot of women because he is not emotionally available, physically available sometimes, but not emotionally available. Or he dates a lot of women because that's what he's seen his dad do. That's what he's seen his uncles do. That's what he's seen his older brothers do. I think at a certain point, men feel like it's okay to date a lot of women and to have relationships with a lot of women. It's really not. You know why? Because you never know who you are as a person. You're just only modeling what you've seen done, if that
mm.
makes sense.
Yes, yes, it makes perfect sense.
Okay.
And I know we would probably have to get into that another time, because I would love to. Where I was at last night, they was having that exact conversation about men dating women and women dating men and quantities and things like that. And so it was very eye opening. I'm like, wow, like, this is, we was talking about it before the show, so it was just crazy. Couple of comments here. Kenny, I agree with the theory. Also, the states needs to continue to make money after slavery was made illegal. Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. That's historical.
So they talked about the plantation to the school, factories, and prison pipeline.
The chemistry is usually off. They don't know how to let a man do his job or play his role. I'm independent. I don't need you. Come. Yeah, yeah. And I hate that. I hate that.
And so that's where we talk about the mass
Uh,
women that move from femininity to the masculinity roles. Okay, emotional impact of absentee dads can be lifelong. Yes, we just talked about that. And then I want to talk about the women with the signs of women with daddy issues. We have 8 of them. Women who daddies were absent or fathers were absent. They oftentimes struggle with anxious attachments. They feel afraid of being vulnerable. They use sex to feel loved. They don't know the difference between just being loved and using sex to feel loved. Okay. They have trust issues. They tend to pick unhealthy partners. They put their partner on a pedestal, so they kind of praise their partners because they don't have high self esteem, basically. Okay. They also have trouble in setting healthy boundaries for themselves, and they date older men. So women who have some issues with their fathers being absent, by no means is this list 100%. You can add some things, you can take some things out, but these are just some signs of women who actually struggle or have daddy issues. Okay.
Good
Um,
list. Leave a real quick comment. I grew up with one parent and she was toxic. Once I started studying knowledge of self, I began to learn how I was conditioned to treat men. That is very interesting and revealing right there. And you know what's funny about that too? A lot of women wouldn't admit that.
but
Like,
you know what? That's a part of healing and a part of
yes,
growth. When
yes,
we go through things, we actually grow through things, and so that's just a sign that she's in her healing stage.
I love that. Because again, you know, I think, so that's a whole other conversation, right? With Kevin Samuels and all that, right? But a lot of one thing that I did agree with him, one was that, because we get it, men have been messing up for a long time, right? Messing up for a long time, but it doesn't enable and give women to right and to say, you like the song Scrub, right? You a scrub. I don't want this. I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want that. So you intentionally are mistreating him, and in the case that when he hasn't done anything, right? You already go into the relationship with that mindset when he hasn't even done anything to you. You have to
Mhm.
judge by the guy's actions, right? Not by previous guys. Just like if it was a woman and a woman comes to a relationship and he's already got his mind made up on how you're going to be, you're like, well, that was before me, sweetie. This is me now. That was your ex or two exes or three exes ago, whatever it may be, right? And so I love that. She said she had to, think about how she was treating, right? And so that takes a lot of strength and just mental makeup and healing to do that. So I commend you for that comment. Next topic,
All
mothers,
right.
your son's lives. Go ahead.
Okay, so mothers play a critical role in raising sons and boys to be emotionally healthy and successful men. Studies have shown that teenage boys who have appropriate close relationships with their mothers are also better in school. They experience less depression and anxiety and are less likely to engage in risky behaviors. However, when a mother is not in her son's life, her son may suffer insecurities, insecure attachments, issues resolving in avoidance of close relationships, general fearlessness of being abandoned again, and also reduces him from the ability to experience genuinely happiness in relationships.
And those
So it's critical that that mothers are also available for their boys, and you can see that when boys are in relationships with women. And I often say that they date women so they can get their physical needs met, but oftentimes boys who didn't have their mothers in their life or their mothers were toxic, they hate women. So you can see them intentionally mistreating the mother. I mean, intentionally mistreating the woman that they're dating because they have unresolved issues with their mother, and they have bitterness towards women because the mother did not give them what they needed and she was not there to nurture them.
and I love that because I always look at myself with my my relationship with my mother. I have very great memories with her. They used to call her Lady in Red, tall, dark woman, beautiful woman. And so every time that I look at my wife, I get that feeling, right?
Mhm.
That shout out to my wife, I love you, baby. But that feeling like that, just oh my God, knockout, right? I used to see my mom when she would go out, right, with my aunt, and this was back in the '80s and stuff, and so they would go out, and so how we would look at my mom like, my mom pretty nice looking, right, and so I get that same vibe and feeling when I look at my wife. And so, because it's the appreciation I had for her, right, as a woman. You understand what I'm saying? And just the beauty of a woman. You guys are beautiful. And so I love that. That is absolutely true. I don't hate women. I love them. Like I have to love women. you have to love women to have kids, right? I love my kids. So no, that makes sense, right? So I love that comment. And this is my man Lo. What's up? What's up? What's up? How can I, man, who doesn't have the opportunity of being in his child life, be in a relationship with someone who has kids? Like the man doesn't supposed to feel any way of not being a part of his own child's life. And see that's you're the expert. Go ahead. I'll let you dive that.
I will say this. I'll go with the women first. Any woman that begins to date a man and the man has children before he got with you and he's not in his kid's life, get rid of him, because that's just a sign that he is not accountable, and he's going to be down the line. He's going to be a toxic fellow. Now, if the mom of the child is not allowing him to see the children, that's something totally different. But if you're a father and you have the availability to take care of your kid, to spend time with your kid, you should be doing that. You should not feel like a man if you're in a relationship with a woman who has kids and you don't have contact with your children, or you're not taking care of them. And see, I don't call them men, I call them boys. Those are boys. You know, a lot of times they still have boyish ways, childish ways. Those are boys. They still play with toys and things like that. So that's not a man. A man is going to be accountable, and he's going to take responsibility for his children. And that's it. That's the message.
This too, with my, and again, I can always go to my stepfather. So he took care of me and my brother and my sister. My sister is his daughter, biological daughter. He took care of us like we wasn't even his. Mm-hmm. You know, and, I mean, like where he is. Yeah, where he is. He never used the words like we were kids. That's my stepfather and all that. I call him Pop to this day. You know, and because I love him, because he showed me a role of a man. He showed me what you do. You go work. You bring home the money. Bring home the the food and all that. You put your boots on. You don't complain. You suit up, boot up, and go get it. You know what I'm saying? And so that's why I love him. So I don't know. Like I know of men like that. That's just not what I saw. Mm-hmm. And so that's just crazy to me. That's crazy to me. So good comment though. Leah, go ahead.
All right, Leah, good conversation. Hi, Siobhan. She says, hi, y'all, and let the boys go. So I have a couple more things before we wrap up, guys. I'm sorry we got to get off so early, but I have a dinner to go to celebrate my nephews for their birthday. So we have like 5 more minutes, and I have to go. All right, last thing, we talk about mothers who are not in their son's life. And Amara, you have that, right?
I had the mothers who with absentee mothers.
Okay.
And so, just real quick, some of the things here, issues here. They lack confidence, no belief in self, anger. They have a lot of anxiety, depression. Now, again, not all of these are true, but just some. Right? Disobedience. So no respect for authority, unable to focus. And hard to trust others, and awkward in social settings. And so it goes back with the men, right? When I said, I think you made this point early with the men, when you don't have a man in the home, it's hard for you to connect with other men. And so it's kind of it's the flip right here, right? With the women, I don't know, because I don't know how that looked like, but I know with men. So have you seen that before with women who haven't had mothers in their lives that don't know how to just connect with another woman in social settings?
I've seen that. I've seen women who have not had their mothers around, how they act around other women. They're insecure sometimes. They get jealous when they see a pretty woman who's very confident. They don't know how to be relatable, or if they had toxic mothers who didn't show them certain things. And so you'll have them, like, they'll have envy of certain women. Like, I'm a very confident woman. I can walk into a room, either people are going to gravitate toward me or they're going to gravitate far away from me. And it's nothing that I did per se, it's how they feel about themselves. And so, yes, I've witnessed it. So real quick, can we pop up the, I'll do this, and then we need to pop up the traits of women who are, who haven't had their dads, okay, or good traits for women. So this one just said the women who haven't had their fathers, they end up developing spirits of survival mode, survival skills. They subconsciously accept less in relationships due to diminished self-esteem. They often pick wrong people for their partners. And also they find themselves dating guys who are womenizers because they don't know what to look for in a man. Okay. All right. 2 more things, and then I am going to see you guys in 2 weeks. Go ahead and pop that up for me, Eugene.
we have well, we also have the word of the day too.
Oh yes, let me do
Word,
the word of the day.
word of the day is purpose. Swahili translation is kusudi, and is the reason for which something is done or created, or for which something exists. Any comments to that?
I chose that because it was based off the Bible scripture when we talked about purpose. And so there, if we are following our purpose, we are doing things intentionally because we're looking for a desired result.
Okay. Um, so we have a couple. Well, before we go, because I got a couple, we got a couple. So so real quick, we have healthy feminine traits, right? And I'll run through them real quick. Intuition, empathy, sensitivity, charm, collaboration, vulnerability. I'm bad at that. Nurturing, style, self-awareness, and kindness. So that was her traits. Any follow up with that? Any comments with that? With some of those?
No, I think for me that's a solid list. Women, if you are dating a man, just make sure you're in your feminine space. Masculinity, we don't need that. We leave that for the men, for them to be masculine. Let's just be feminine. You're not going to always agree on things, agree to disagree, and then move past that. And I'm telling you, it'll make your relationships 100% much
better. Healthy masculine traits, and so just some of the ones that I had to: strength, confidence, courage, courageous, independence, leadership. That's really big. That I'm seeing that term being, that's not being thrown around, but I think that's really big when you talk about masculinity, being able to lead. Assertiveness, inspiration. I think this is big because a lot of men don't understand that their words can inspire their mate, right? Instead of tearing her down, build her up, right? And so you can inspire her. You just like, baby, do I look fat? Like, no, you don't. But if we could get on the treadmill together, maybe I don't have to answer that question. You answer for yourself, right? Just it's being a different ways and inspiring each other and inspiring her. Also, builders, right? I believe when I think of men, I think people, guys or men who build stuff, building legacies, building families, you just building things. And so I really think that. And then accountable. I believe that when you're a man and you have great masculine traits, you're going to hold yourself accountable, but you're going to hold others accountable around you too. And so we hate that we had to leave this space early because she has a prior engagement. But if you, Candace, if you want to continue this conversation, we'll be back in 2 weeks. Before we go, do you have any shout outs quickly? And before you give your shout outs, I want to say happy birthday to the twins. I know this is very important. Them jokers are them grown men. There's some grown men right there. So shout out to them. Go ahead.
So I just want to say, just shout out to everybody that watches our podcast. We thank you so much. Extra shout out to Kenny. He's watching us from Nigeria. Thank you, everybody. We love you. Please like and share. We're on Instagram. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. We're also on Twitter. Again, happy birthday to the twins. I love you guys. We're actually headed out to Chicago, so you know how traffic can be. But thanks, guys, for joining in. Anything that you guys need, we can finish this conversation. DM us. I love everybody for the support. Have a nice week, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
See you guys. Peace.